and welcome to the Momversation Club. I'm Claire Strong.
And I'm Christina Struckmeyer. We're two moms like you navigating the nitty-grittiness of modern motherhood and taking you along with us as we talk about the topics that nobody talks about.
And today we're really excited because we're joined by Joko Alaye, who's the owner of Mourning Space and the author of Fire Under the Night Sky, A Guide to Letting Go, as we dive into navigating depressional triggers during the holidays. So Joko, thanks so much for joining us today.
I'm so grateful to be back. Thanks for having me.
Well, we love having you on the show. We had you on as a guest in season 1, and we're so thrilled that you're joining us again for season 2. And it's a very timely time that you've joined us as well, because we're getting into the holiday season. And, you know, for many people, that can be kind of an emotional time, can't it?
It absolutely can. And like today, I was getting ready to be on your show, and I was trying to figure out what I was going to wear. And like, it's a beanie season, like it's cold now, and I'm like, love beanie season. But I was like, maybe y'all don't want a beanie on, whatever. But this is actually a San Francisco Skate Club beanie, and my friend who was an owner and founder of the San Francisco Skate Club, she died on Black Friday, 2020, I do believe. And so, this is an important conversation, and I have my own grief around the holidays when she passed, and all of the memories of working through that. And so she's represented today.
Oh, I love that. I love that you're representing your friend in such a sweet way. That is lovely. But I know, Christina, you've spoken on the podcast before. You've experienced grief in the last few years, haven't you? Your dad passed away, and how do the holidays kind of conjure up all those feelings again for you?
I think for a lot of people who have gone through a big loss like that, and the loss of a parent is a huge one, there can be triggers around like certain memories. And Christmas isn't a huge one for me. We actually just passed Halloween, and that's kind of a big holiday trigger for me with my dad, because we had a lot of Halloween memories tied together. But I will say that for a lot of folks, this time of year, it's not the most wonderful time of the year. There can be a lot of challenges, and not just with death, but for me, a lot of my challenges go with family dynamics. Things like, yes, this person's not here, but how does that person not being here change everything else? How does, one person stepping away from the family change that? And how do you navigate those things and grieve them properly, but also enjoy the holidays with your children? And so I'm excited to have these conversations, because it isn't just the death, which is definitely huge. I think when someone dies, there's also the aftershocks of all the different things that change. And those are the things that I feel the most during the holidays, are those little minute changes where that person's stocking isn't there anymore, or we used to do Christmas lights with this person, but now they're not here. Like, those are like the smaller situations, and not so much the day of. It's like the holiday season triggers as we get into it. You know a lot about grief. We kind of skipped over because we assume everybody's been watching us since the beginning, right? But share a little bit about why we brought you on, Joko. Like, how do you connect to grief, and share a little bit about what you do for a living.
Sure. Yeah. So I've been a funeral director. I've worked in funeral homes, death care professional for the last 20 something years. So the 90s. And, I've just done nothing over my adult life other than serve families who are grieving. And that's during the holiday season. Yes. But it's also just, it's every day. Right. And through this work, which is really important to me, I have been able to observe people in grief. I've been able to participate in, some kind of levels of healing. And I've picked up tools along the way that helps me be a better support for those people. And then in appropriate times, help educate others, not just on their own grief and healing, but the ways that just we as a society can support one another. Because we're really, and that's why Mourning Space was really started, is because we're not really taught how to deal with death and dying, or not really taught how to grieve. A lot of how we learn that is through experience, through our parents, our community around us. And quite frankly, we're not great at it. And so it's now our responsibility as moms to teach our children what it looks like to grieve in a healthy manner, what it looks like to allow grief to exist, acknowledge the realities of death and dying. We have a great opportunity as moms to be a safe space to teach our kids. And then they're going to be able to do it for their kids. And that's, I don't know what's more important work, right? Helping our kids create the society we want to live in,
Yeah, for sure. And with my girls, because they're teenagers now, they are just so much more aware of things. And I just wondered, Joko, if you could share some tips really for other moms who, there may have been a family death, or that there's something going on, and how, we should best approach that subject with our kids.
To me, one of just the most simple things that you can do is, when it comes up, acknowledge it and sit with it instead of shoving it down. Like, if you could do nothing else, it's when it surfaces, acknowledge it. And that's for yourself. So kids seeing you grieve is fine. It's good for them to see someone be sad, but and speak about it. Like, I miss my dad. I miss whatever. Like, this is a hard time for me, and maybe you and I can do something, and we're going to make each other feel better. And if you want to give me a hug to like make me feel better, and then they, feel good because they're kind of taking care of you a little bit. It's nice to show them what it looks like to take care of someone who's grieving too. Right. So hands down, best thing you can do is just allow it to be and acknowledge it. And yeah, don't shove it down. I mean, there are things maybe you don't want to do in front of your kids necessarily, and that's, up to you as a person to decide, but don't be afraid that sharing those experiences will break your kid. It won't. It'll help them become compassionate adults.
And now a quick break in the Momversation to bring you a word from today's sponsor.
Sometimes being a mom can feel overwhelming. And being a mum of a child with special needs, well, that doesn't come with a manual, or so we thought.
Today's sponsor is Flourishing Families, the annual special needs digital guide and online resource database from the Special Needs Resource Foundation and San Diego Family Magazine.
This one-stop shop provides a comprehensive resource list with access to over 1,000 options, including service providers, camps, therapists, advocates, and much more for families with disabilities in San Diego and Imperial County.
Flourishing Families also offers informative articles and helpful tips for parents just like us. Click the link in our show notes or visit snrfsd.org to explore these valuable resources today. I think that's great. And I think what I've noticed is it really helps me in my grief to share happy moments with my kids. And that can be a form of grieving at the same time as also educating them about someone they may not have known or not have known for very long. Something we do during the holidays is when we're putting up our ornaments, we have a lot of ornaments that are special to different family members. We maybe had a great grandmother who gave us her angel for the top of the tree. Or when my father passed, we got a special ornament from a family member that honors him. And that's another way that we kind of acknowledge those people who have passed, while also doing something that brings joy to us at the same time. I think talking about them in fond ways is also really helpful for them, just connecting that they still live on in our memory. Like, the people we lose aren't gone forever unless we stop talking about them and stop acknowledging that they were there.
Right. And how often in your kids do you see like your relatives? Mm-hmm. Oh, my dad used to kind of make that face, or like cross their legs in that way, or, whatever it is, like an expression, or, whatever. And so they literally live on in your kids. And it's, personally to me, it's good to know where you came from. It's good to know your family history. It's good to connect with your ancestry. And, I keep an ancestor altar in my home at all times. That's a place where I have pictures of both sides of my family and my husband's family. I jokingly call them the bosses. And I'll, regularly give them, water or alcohol, whatever their favorite was, or I'll give them food that I've made or something that was their favorite. I give my grandmother the cigarettes that she liked. It was my grandfather's birthday a couple days ago, and I bought him the snuff. He used to keep snuff in the garage refrigerator, and he'd call it candy, and he'd be like, go get my candy, tell us his little grandkids to go get his candy out of the fridge. And so I give him his candy on his birthday. And I'll tell my son, I'm like, the bosses need, food. Go put something on. And he'll be like, okay. So and then I talk about him, like, and then I'm saying, like, great. I tell him the candy story, or my aunt, who was a real big part of my life growing up. Baking was a big thing for her. And so if I bake something and I just reflect on, like, she made my wedding cake, like her holiday baking was like legendary. And I'm so grateful my cousins have kept up her fudge. Like Auntie Fran's fudge is a thing, and her swirl cookies are a thing. And so I almost always get fudge and cookies from them on the holidays. So yeah, it's great ways to show them where they came from, because there's something in there that can blossom too. It's the little stuff that you see, but it's other things that you will find that your kids have that, maybe someone is a baker, like Auntie Fran was a baker, and it shows them, like, oh no, that lives inside you, and it's cool to have that come out and continue that legacy.
Yeah. I love, Joko, how normal you're basically making death in your house. It's not this taboo subject, and it's to the point where it's not only is it not a taboo subject in your house, you are you're celebrating those people in your traditions, in, like you say, you're actually making food for them, and you're having conversations with them, and I love that. I mean, that's kind of a new concept to me, but I think it really takes the stigma away and takes the embarrassment or fear out of talking about death. I love that approach.
Well, my kid also grew up, like, he spent 3 very formative years living in a funeral home. So, like, he got the
well, that'll do it.
I remember one day, it is. One day I came upstairs, and he was probably like 4 or 5 at the time, and he's like, look what I built with my Legos. And it was like the minifigs were in little sections, and he's like, oh, he's buried here, and he made like a mausoleum basically out of Legos, like not knowing what it was.
Oh my gosh, that's funny.
I love that. And I think that what I love about you normalizing it is it's okay if you do have emotions connected. It's actually welcomed. I love that you feel the feelings, because sometimes, I'll talk about people that I've lost and I'll get a little teary-eyed, or and my children have asked, Mommy, are you sad? And I say, yeah, sometimes when you remember people, you're sad and you're happy. Like, you can have those two feelings be there. It's important for your kids to know that there are places for sadness. It's okay to be sad that someone's not here and still be happy that you remember them and have those memories. And gosh, it's our hope as moms that we are those memories for our kids. I think about all the little things you just mentioned about your grandpa's favorite, your grandma's favorite, the people in your life, your aunt. You have these little things attached to them. For me, it was my great grandmother did lemon drops. She had like lemon drops next to her. She smoked a lot of cigarettes, and so she had lemon drops. And so every time I see lemon drops, I always think of my great grandmother. And I hope that as moms, we can create those connections for our kids. I hope that when they see Christmas, come up in their own home, when they're adults, they remember how Mom used to get the tree and we used to do the ornaments together, or the start of the season, how I used to do Christmas carols right on the 29th because Dad allows it right after Thanksgiving. We're not allowed to skip Thanksgiving in our house. But I think those are
those rituals are important. Yeah, those rituals are important, and they remember them. And I will say, something that can happen when, like, it's maybe a first holiday, is that people maybe can't get themselves to participate in that ritual, putting up the lights, whatever it is, because it brings up too many feelings. And so I do want to make sure we give people permission to take a year off, right, of those things. If it's really like, I can't, it's too much. And so there is this idea too of giving yourself permission to take it easy. And we kind of talked about this leading up into the call of like, what do we, like, how do we go into the holiday season with tools to come out, the best that we can. And, and I really think one of those things is giving yourself permission to take it easy. Maybe instead of doing 20 things, you do one thing, and maybe you do no things, but Christmas will be back next year. It's okay to just take a breather if that's what you need.
And now a quick break in the Momversation to bring you a word from today's sponsor.
Raise your hand if you love shopping for jeans. Well, if you're listening with a hand up, then you're in the minority, because for most of us, it's a nightmare.
Waist gaps, unclear sizing, fluorescent lights, unflattering fits. I am sweating just thinking about it. What if we could skip all of that and just have the perfect pair magically transported to us?
Well, that's where today's sponsor, Neems Jeans, comes in. This women-owned business was created by someone who understands the struggle and offers custom denim jeans made to your exact body measurements, delivered right to your door.
Neems Jeans gives you the perfect fit every time, guaranteed, and offers inclusive sizings for every body. Moms, you are one of a kind, and your jeans should be too. Visit neemsjeans.com and use code Momversation15 at checkout for 15% off your order.
That's NEEMS jeans.com and code Momversation15 for your special savings.
Well, and a lot of people, even if they haven't had a loss, like something that I've noticed is there's kind of this holiday depression, winter blues, like seasonal depression that'll come in about the time that the daylight savings time comes in, and there's a shift. There's a shift in a lot of people, and even if they haven't encountered a large loss, there's this feeling of sadness. And trying to navigate that, especially when you're a mom and you're trying to do your day-to-day activities, is really hard. So it's good to hear, like, if you need to take on less during a time where you have less capacity, that's okay.
Well, and like last year, so I have my one son and my husband, and they're really not big Christmas people. And I grew up where my mom was always decorating, and me and my brother we had a fake tree, and me and my brothers always put up the fake tree, and we put on music, and it was like this whole thing. And so I have these really fond memories of doing that. And then I tried to bring that to my family, and it's not the same family. It's just not, and I'm last year I was like, I'm tired. I just don't have it. And I didn't do much. And my son was like, although he like participating is something I kind of got to arm wrestle him into, he was just like, we didn't do anything this year. And I'm like, well, because you got to help me. So I know now that it's noticed, when before I felt like no one would care if Christmas was canceled. So it's nice. It was nice to know that he did notice when it wasn't there. And so that reminds me too, like, maybe your kids aren't going to say anything, but that doesn't mean they don't appreciate what's happening. And
yeah,
so
they're always
watching,
aren't they? Yeah, you're right, Joko. What is it, though, about the holidays, do you think, Joko, that just, creates so much sadness? And do you think part of it is the expectation that, holidays are supposed to be this enjoyable, big grand family gathering time, and maybe people are just not in that mental space for whatever reason to deal with it? What is it about the holidays that creates so much pressure for people?
I'm trying to figure out if it's my life or my outlook that makes things feel so much more difficult than they felt like as a kid. I don't know if I really have more responsibilities, say, than my parents did, or if not, but there is this sort of pressure to like get all the family together and have it be a big thing and have it be so meaningful, and maybe even like bring it back to how it felt as a kid versus maybe as an adult it felt like that for my parents, right? But as a kid, I just had the wonder and the happiness of being around people, but the parents did all the work, right?
Yeah.
And so maybe it's just like, this is actually what it looks like as a whatever 40-some 30-some whatever mom to like put this on for your family. Like it's stressful.
Well, I do always remember my mum. Sorry to interrupt, Joko. I mean, I have fond memories of Christmas, but my mum used to be super stressed cooking Christmas dinner, because in England, our Christmas dinner is the same as your Thanksgiving dinner. So we have the turkey and all the vegetables. And it used to be an ordeal. And I remember thinking, I cannot wait until I am doing Christmas myself, because I promise I won't be as stressed as my mum. And I hope I'm not. I don't think I'm as stressed as my mum. But yeah, it's funny because, when you put yourself under so much pressure over such an important, time, it can just lead to total meltdown. And I think as well, we talk about this a lot on the show, Christina, but I think the expectation for mums is just so much higher than it is for maybe like the dads. It's, Christmas, for example, is very much at our whim. If we don't pull it off, then Christmas doesn't happen. And so not only are we navigating these potentially stressful times, then you add on grief, or you add on, seasonal depression, or whatever it is you may be going through. That's a lot, isn't it?
Yeah. It's a lot. I will say, I feel like Christmas is a little bit like Mom's Super Bowl. We a little bit,
That's
a
a
little
good
bit,
one.
and it starts with the Christmas cards. Like as they roll in, I'm like, oh God, like I did not get a good family picture, and I gotta figure this out, and I gotta get them out on time, and I gotta make sure everybody sees my family as this like happy family. We are happy still. We are still here. Like everybody get your Christmas cards. And then yeah, as the holiday season starts, like you're the magic maker. You're doing this and you're doing that, and you're planning excursions and the arts and crafts and all of the things. And there is a sense of if I don't do it, nobody else will. And like Joko mentioned, she didn't do it. So that it didn't happen because not everyone like did it together. And so, yeah, we've got a lot on our shoulders. And then to your point, Joko, about the nostalgia, I think we're all kind of chasing, in a way, not just with Christmas, but with so much that we do as mothers, this sense of even if you had a good parent life, if you had a good childhood, maybe you're chasing the way that that felt and wanting to create it for your kids. If you didn't have a good one, maybe you're trying to create what you wish it would have been with your kids. And if you miss the mark, or you feel like you're missing the mark, it can be a big hit to your identity. And I think that that's where, for me, a lot of my seasonal depression comes in. If I feel like I'm not up to par, I'm down on myself. And, I have therapists, so this is not my only therapy session, but, she's mentioned to me, my therapist has, about, who's putting that expectation on you? Like, who is the person that you're going to disappoint if you don't do X, Y, Z? And is it your husband? I'm like, well, no, of course not. And he's like, well, is it your kids? And it's like, if you come down to it, we are crushing ourselves to death trying to chase this imaginary race that we're all running in, and we're losing the joy in the process, I think.
Yes, yeah. And that I think you're right. And I hope what we can try to figure out instead is, how do you find the balance of still finding joy, and then being okay if the Christmas cards don't go out. Like that, no one's telling you have to do Christmas cards, right? So that's not, you can put that aside if that's not the thing that brings you joy. Maybe the thing that brings you joy is like having this meal and going seeing lights. And if those two things happen, cool, right?
I love, yes.
And have it be enough. Have it be enough.
Maybe like, I saw this woman did a summer bucket list with her kids. She like put a poster board up, and she was like, okay, we're going to create our top 10 things that we want to do this summer. And it has to be within budget, and we have to make sure that we can accomplish it. It can't be like a long distance away. Like, let's figure it out. And those 10 things got done. And it was simple stuff like go to the city pool, go to the local water park, play in the sprinklers. Like there was like eat ice cream, and it was like these little things that they could accomplish, and they got it done. And so it made it feel like they did summer well. Maybe you make your own for Christmas. Maybe that looks like creating a top 5. Like I need to, in order for this Christmas season to be happy, I need to make sure that no one, goes missing. That, we go see Christmas lights, or we, do a hot chocolate night. We write letters to Santa, like figuring out what are your top priorities. And then all the little itty bitty stuff that comes into play, maybe it won't feel so big if you have like your focus on the top 5 or top 3 things.
Yeah, I like that, Christina. Joko, I was wondering, because Christine and I, we speak a lot about social media and how, as mums, it's so easy to compare ourselves against, other mums we see on social media living these supposedly amazing lives, and really, I'm sure, they're losing their what behind the scenes. But I wondered if like grief, if you see this with grief as too, and whether that there's good support out there. I know that you're providing it, but in general, or whether as mums, as women, when we're on social media during these times, a holiday period particularly, whether that is compounding this image of how everything needs to be perfect, and we may not be feeling that way. And I just wondered, whether that was something that comes into play.
I'm laughing because one of my very best friends has like 4 kids, and she's a stay-at-home mom, and all of her birthday parties and all of everything that she does is very sort of picture perfect. Whereas like like we just had Halloween, right? And all of her kids are in fancy stuff, and my kid, like, he chose a Garfield beanie, like literally a beanie,
Oh,
as
that's
his
cute.
Halloween costume, right? And I could sort of judge myself against her or other things, but we just live different lives, and we have different things that we feel like bring us joy, right? And that is really something that's important to her, and it's really not so important to me and my son. I will say yes for social media, but also, and it could be my algorithm, but I see so many people being vulnerable and showing tears and showing sort of messier sides of life that I feel like we're starting to see more real reality. Like, you're always going to see some sort of fake version of reality, or or the perfect moments, but I think a lot of people are sharing their vulnerability on social media. So I feel like we can find
Yeah,
that too.
I love that. So actually, instead of it being maybe like more of a pressure cooker for people that are grieving, they're actually going on there and maybe seeing someone else being open and honest about their experience too.
Well, I mean, definitely when you're in my algorithm, that's all you see, right? So, my Instagram looks a lot different than everybody else's Instagram,
Yeah.
but my Instagram is full of sad people, full of it. So you can find them. They're there.
Oh my
Just start
God.
tagging.
Have you got some, Joko, have you got some tips, for people, our listeners that are listening to this, and they may be feeling, the holidays are just hard for me. I'm sad. They bring back memories of people that may not be here. I'm just in a tough situation. Maybe I'm separated. Maybe I'm on my own. I'm a single mom. Christina and I can attest to that. It doesn't necessarily have to be losing someone that can invoke feelings of grief. I mean, I remember, just to digress slightly, but when I was going through my divorce, at the holidays, I would be almost in a state of grief because my family wasn't together in the way that I thought it was going to be. And so the holidays were hard for me. And so I just wondered if you had, a couple of tips really to help people through this period, because it can be really, really tough.
Again, that number one is just like, when it comes up, honor it, right? Just feel it, and don't push it down, like, and say it out loud, like, write it down, like, sing it out, like something that's like, I am not happy because this is not how I pictured my life, and then when you give it air, it's not tamped down to make you explode, right? And that doesn't mean it's not hard. It's just that breathing space makes you feel a little more ease, or gets it out. Anything is better out than in. I would say finding balance, doing the things that bring you joy, right, to our conversation, and cutting out the things that aren't. I would say, the things that are always good for us in times of like stress, which is like dancing, or like being outside, hugging our kids, like walking our dogs, eating well, like taking care of our bodies, right? And we talk about seasonal depression
Yes.
too. And I realized that I have that. And it took me a few winters of like coming into spring going like, that was a real tough winter. wonder what that's about. And then it keeps happening, and you're like, oh, yeah, winter's tough. But the year I didn't feel so bad was the year I was a part of this like running session. Like we have a local group that does runs every weekend through February. And the year I did that was like I felt the best. You know, and I think holidays also you got a lot of food around all the time, right? And so remembering like participate in that, but also make sure you're nourishing yourself as well. Just like give yourself the best chance of mind, body, spirit, health, which is doing the things that you know sustain you.
Yeah. I also love that you've identified that that's something that you have going on every year because it allows you to prepare a little bit. At least for me, I know I also struggle with seasonal depression, and I know that about myself during the holidays, things can get really tough, and I put a lot of expectations on myself. So when I'm looking at creating my calendar or trips or things that are going on, I'm going, okay, let's create some gaps. Let's create some space because I'm going to need downtime. I'm going to need absorption time in order to accomplish all of this stuff and still be mentally well. And I think that that's important too. There's a sense of, especially during this time of year, you have to say yes to everything, or you'll disappoint someone, or maybe even yourself. And it's okay to say no to some stuff that isn't gonna serve you in this season, or maybe it's something you would really love to do, but it's just not gonna work this year. Maybe this isn't the year for that.
Well, so and part of that is like having boundaries and sticking to them. Like that's another huge thing. These are also times when family's around, and family is not always the most supportive, the most safe. It's just true, right? And so sometimes you got to put up boundaries with certain people. And as painful as it might feel to have those boundaries because you love those people, like you have to do it to protect yourself. And there's a way to do it with love. There's a way to do it with, it's just like positive intent of like, I know that you're trying your best to like help me in the way that you think that you need to help me, but that's not what I need from you right now. Stating clearly what you need, going to the people who will give you what you need, right? So you're going to have some people who are safe. It might be family, it might not be, but go to them when you need something specific. And if you can, and it's safe to tell other people, like when they're doing something that's not resonating, just say like, that's not working for me. And hopefully they'll take it. And not everyone will, right? And so we just got to know that we're not great at giving or receiving boundaries sometimes because we don't practice. So it's our job to practice so our kids see what that looks like.
Yeah, and I guess there's no better time to implement boundaries than the holidays because it can get really overwhelming with or without feeling depressed or grieving. And so, yeah, that's a great point and something that we, especially as mums, need to remember. But I'd love to hear from our listeners as well. I mean, what are the holidays like for you? What do you struggle with? I'd love to hear from you because it's just nice to know that, we're not alone and there are other mums that are going through this too. So Joko, I mean, once again, you're just we could talk to you for hours. You're just an amazing individual. You do some awesome work that is so, so needed. And Christina and I love how open you are. And so we're huge fans of yours. And for anyone else who maybe, isn't as familiar with you as we are, where can they find you?
Currently, they can find me on Instagram at Mourning Space. And I am going to be opening a calendar for some times that are open for people who need to speak about particularly some grief-related holiday issues. So I'll have some times available that people can choose if they need. If they don't feel like they have a safe person to just dump on, I'm not a medical professional. I'm not going to fix your problem, but I'm going to listen to you. That's what I'm able to do. And sometimes we just want someone to listen to us, without judgment, without, feeling like there's going to think you're right or wrong or whatever, just someone to hear you out. So I'm going to make myself available for that.
Yes. And I want to plug before we go your amazing book, because in your book that you wrote, you talk about grieving all sorts of things. And it's a really great guide to letting go of things that, are on your heart. And so share with us about how we can get to that book as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Easiest way is to get it off of Amazon, Fire Under the Night Sky. It is a workbook, and it's great, I will say, for New Year's resolutions, right? So it is a way to give yourself a funeral for a part of yourself that you are ready to let go. So I'll be clear, it's not about, losing somebody. It's not about death and dying, really. It's about, I need to be the best version of me, which means this version, this thing that I do, this habit I have, this whatever, needs to stay in 2024, right? And so that's what it will help you do. Leave that part of you in 2024 and give you tools to embody the best self in 2025.
And that brings us to the end of another episode of the Momversation Club.
And if you've enjoyed today's show, please don't forget to like, subscribe, and leave a review.
And we hope today's episode has helped you to feel more seen and less alone in motherhood. Until next time, bye for now.